Hey, thanks for watching Numbskull News. In today's video, we're talking about the music in the late 90s, non-nu metal, top 10 albums. Now, before we had streaming, before we had the internet really, you had radio. You had radio, you had MTV, and to a lesser extent, you had VH1, and that's how you really determined sound and the popularity and the culture of a certain time period in music. And of course, today we're focusing on the late 90s. And 20 years removed from the late 90s, all anyone ever talks about or writes about is the nu metal part of the late 90s, which is very prominent, and it was all over the radio, all over MTV. But there was so much more going on in the late 90s. Had a lot of really rich sounds, a lot of great bands going on that had nothing to do with nu metal. And all this stuff doesn't get talked about, it gets forgotten about, and it's criminal. It's just criminal. So we're going to do our focus here on top 10 bands that had albums with radio hits that were very much a part of the sound of the late 90s. Number 10, Local H, As Good as Dead, came out in 96, one big radio hit, Bound for the Floor, very popular song, very underground band, Local H. The music journalists usually love this band, and really it's for a good reason. They were very punk influenced, but you can hear a little grunge, a little alternative in there. This album here is their top album, their best album, really fun, really catchy. If you're a younger person and you're watching some old man talk about music for some reason, you never heard of them, check this album out. Whatever streaming service, whatever platform you use, you won't be sorry. Stabbing Westward, Wither, Blistered, Peel and Burn, or Burn and Peel. What is that hell? Long, stupid title. Wither, Blister, Burn and Peel. Yeah, 96 is when it came out. Had two big radio hits on it, Shame and What Do I Have to Do. Those songs were everywhere. Really salty band, really good band. They weren't my favorite out of the late 90s, but I have to give this album a lot of respect. It was hitting on all cylinders and was definitely their best output of their careers. They kind of got labeled as a bit of a Nine Inch Nails ripoff, but they were way more guitar-laden, guitar-heavy, focused more on the metal than the industrial part of the band. A lot of dance kind of stuff going on as well. So if you're into that kind of stuff, and you've never heard of Stabbing Westward, or you may have heard them in passing, give them a shot. You probably won't be sorry. I never was. Number 8 is the underground darlings, Primus. Anyone who loves underground culture of music, and that's one of the great things about heavy metal, is that solid underground bass. There's so much stuff to go through and filter through, so many different sounds, so much variety. And every once in a while, one of those bands finds its way onto the charts, finds its way onto the radio and on MTV. Or, well, not MTV anymore, but back then, yes. And that was one of the beautiful things about the 90s. There was so many bands that would never have gotten a shot in any other era, would have never got on the radio, would have never had a video, None of that stuff. Primus, fortunately, found its way there. Tales from the Punch Bowl in 95. Why known as Big Brown Beaver. Their best song of their career. Love this song. And there's not many bands that focus on the bass, on the bass aspect. And Primus, I mean, my God, that dude can play crazy vocals, like just redneck, sleeping with your sister. We're doing these kind of vocals right here. It's just nuts. It's nuts. And I know it doesn't sound appealing, but Primus, it's an acquired taste, a lot like okra. But this song, anyone can enjoy. It's great.
They're stuffed in your pocket, full of absolutely. When I don't get my bag, I take it out of the sleeves. So grease up your baby before all on the hill, and polish him right style, and swallow those pills, and say, oh.
Number 7, Monster Magnet's Power Trip, came out in 98. Had one of my all-time favorite songs, Space Lord. Beautiful song, great song, criminally forgotten about. And this band has several really great albums. I mean, it was hard rock, sounded like southern rock, with a pinch of White Zombie thrown in there. The frontman has an outstanding vocal. The musicianship is outstanding. The production on this album is phenomenal. Phenomenal. You don't have to EQ a damn thing. It's set up perfectly. Number 6, Sevendust's self-titled debut came out in 97, which featured a radio hit Black, My Ruin. This band, it's an incredible story. For one, I believe they came out of Atlanta, and they got together, they practiced nonstop. Their very first show, very first live show, they get signed to a record deal. Who the hell does that? Well, Sevendust did. And that's their first album, the first thing they came up with. I don't even think they were together a year yet. And a phenomenal album. I remember back in the day, I was in a small little local band and so freaking jealous, but I was like, damn, they sound so much better than we do. I mean the vocals, come on, Lejean is just phenomenal. He's great. And it's not like there's a lot of bands with a black frontman. And this was one of the very, very few, and and even fewer still, that were just that good. I mean, the songwriting is incredible, and the hooks are great. If you never heard of them, that's their self-titled thing. They've had a slew of albums afterwards. They're all really good. This is one of my favorites, and this just it captures the really youth and enthusiasm of a brand new band, like. Because most bands, even with a self-titled debut, major label or whatever, or heavily distributed album, that newness or that exuberance isn't there as much. With this band, it is there. I mean, it sounds like these guys are fresh out of high school and just waiting to take on the world. And that's a cool thing to listen to through music and to kind of feel coming through the speakers. So, still today, one of my favorite albums, and definitely one of my favorite of the late 90s.
Now this is what it's like when worlds collide. Now this is what it's like. Now this is what it's like when worlds collide. Now this is what it's like. What is it really?
At number 5, yet another criminally forgotten about band and album, which is Power Man 5000, Tonight the Stars Revolt. 2 big radio hits came off of this album, When Worlds Collide and Nobody's Real. And this is Rob Zombie's kid brother And I got to hand this, the musicianship, the rhythm section of PM5K is just nasty, nasty stuff. Now their first album was like more of a new metal style album, and then they kind of switched it up into more of a White Zombie-esque style. So that's why they made the list. Even though I prefer their first album. I think it's the better album. And it came out at a time when the term new metal was not even invented yet. But Tonight the Stars Revolt is a fantastic album. Love it. And I don't mind them kind of borrowing from his older brother the kind of the sound and style of the band a little bit, because they do it so damn well. And like I said, the rhythm section is phenomenal.
I wish I would have met you. Now it's a little late. What you could have taught me.
Coming in at number 4, Short Bus by Filter. Came out in 95. One big radio hit, Hey Man, Nice Shot. For some reason I always thought this song was about Kurt Cobain. I was just like, oh my God, But it's kind of what attracted me to it, just the dark nastiness of that thought, But it wasn't. It wasn't. I read an article a long time ago about what it was actually about. I can't remember now. I know it's not Kurt Cobain. I think they had a little too much respect for him to make that connection there. But yeah, the founder of Filter, he was in Nine Inch Nails, so there's of course a lot of that kind of industrial sound to it. But to me, it's completely forgivable, because that guy was in Nine Inch Nails during the Pretty Hate Machine era. So of course that influence and that style is going to be prevalent in Filter. And Short Bus is a great album. I actually, a lot of people are going to hate this, I actually like Filter Short Bus better than any Nine Inch Nails album. I think the dude's vocals are better. I think his songwriting capability, as far as throughout, the entire album is just better. Trent Reznor, I mean, when he hits a high, man, because like the song Closer is better than anything on Short Bus. But Short Bus throughout, all of its tracks are just better. It's more consistently good than like the Downward Spiral is. That's the way I see it. I know there's Nine Inch Nails fans out there who would want to kill me over that. I don't care. Filter is criminally underrated. Love them. Deserve a spot on this list. They come in at number 4.
Yeah, corrosive dated by my sin, I'm spilling blood in our guts. Early contained. Corrosive following no hat, stepping on eat away, eat into the surface. Yeah, push it. Yeah, push it. Yeah, push it.
Number 3, and at the tail end of the 90s, 1999, comes Static X's Wisconsin Death Trip. God, this album, I love this album. And let me tell you something. There's a lot of people that put Static X in the new metal category. No, it's not new metal. This is metal. It's got industrial, it's got electronica, it's got dance. It has a little hip-hop-y influence in there, but not enough to be considered new metal. There's no rapping, there's none of that. It is just a down and dirty album. Their big radio hit off there was Push It, which was great. And it really helped book into me the 90s, where you start with a band like Pantera coming out with Cowboys from Hell, and then you bookend it with Push It. And it just shows you the heaviness, and all these idiots out there that talk about how the 90s killed metal. I'm like, are you kidding me? It is so rich in metal. It drives me insane. But Static X, well-deserved spot on this list. Barely make it in, but Wisconsin Death Trip, man. What a great album. Love this album. And, R.I.P. to the great late Wayne Static. And they deserve the respect of being on this list. At number 2, you can obviously make the case for this being the number 1 album as far as just influence, the amount of space it took up, as far as just being talked about nonstop, making the news. And that's Marilyn Manson, Antichrist Superstar. Came out in 96. Of course, the big radio hits, Beautiful People, obviously. If you're a wrestling fan, you know that one. And Tourniquet, which is personally my favorite Marilyn Manson song. And there's no way to keep them out of at least the number 2 spot. And you can make a great case for them being number 1, and I wouldn't blame you. But to me, it's just personal preference as far as what's number 2 and what's number 1. And you'll see number 1 in a moment. But I'm not going to bore you to death with giving you a bunch of stats and figures about what this thing sold and what Marilyn Manson meant to the metal community and what he still means. If you don't know that by now, then you don't know shit. And if you don't know shit, which is fine, if you were born in 2005 and you don't know jack about the 90s, perfectly fine. Go back and check out some Marilyn Manson stuff. That's his seminal album. That's his biggest album, Antichrist Superstar. And it's worth checking out, man. It's very unique, and it's a vocal that no one else has been able to duplicate. No one ever, I think, I don't know, I keep coming back to unique. I mean, he's not the most unique. I mean, there was Alice Cooper, female first name, male last name, Marilyn Manson. So he took things from from acts before him, but he definitely made things his own. And his style of music, his vocal is very unique to Marilyn Manson. And if he's not on a list of the late 90s, then you don't know shit about the late 90s.
Astro Creep 2000. Here they are, White Zombie.
Guess what's a stupid human troll?
Number 1, deservedly number 1 of the 90s, White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000. And that's not the whole title. Hold on. It's not the whole title. I keep forgetting this. Astro Creep 2000, semicolon, Songs of Love, Destruction, and Other Synthetic Delusions of the Electric Head. That's a mouthful. So we just say Astro Creep 2000. So that's where we're at. Of course, their hits, More Human Than Human, Electric Head Part 2, although I'm a big fan of Electric Head Part 1, and Supercharger Heaven. Now, I am a bigger fan of their first album versus their second and last album, unfortunately, but Astro Creep 2000 was just a badass album. It really is, and it's my favorite of the late 90s, and White Zombie's probably my favorite 90s band. And you can check out my previous video where I did the early 90s. And of course, you can tell White Zombie was very prevalent with me. Just hard riffs, fantastic bass work. They changed drummers on this, but John Tempesta for Astro Creep 2000 still did great work. The guitarist, Jay, dude's great. Very underrated. No one ever talks about him being, one of the, when you talk about great guitarists in metal history, no one ever talks about Jay, but Jay is right there, man. Just a riff master, great lead work. There's not enough good things to say about this album. And if you're unfamiliar, get familiar. But this was the last album White Zombie would come out, at least full album. You had remix crap and all this stuff, and Then, of course, Rob went and did his own thing and has been doing that ever since. But, man, I always wanted more White Zombie. And you know, like so many things in rock history, you know, you would love to get, you know, Pink Floyd. Well, you're never going to get Pink Floyd again. People, you know, you get hate between band members, and it appears that's the case is with White Zombie. But fortunately, we got two great albums, and Astral Creep 2000, to me, is the #1 album of the late 90s. Period. End of story. Thanks for watching this video. I'll be back with some other crap later. Bye.